right, what's going on, everybody? How you do? How you do? Find somebody who knows somebody to tell somebody about what we got going on right now. If you like it, let me know. Share it if you do, and subscribe if this is what you're looking for. All right, let's go ahead and just tone this down a bit here because I don't want to stay up here all night because you know how we do when folks join, we end up running for about a couple of hours or so. So I know this is still Labor Day weekend and people have got stuff they want to do. So let's go ahead and talk it out. All right. So hello to the two people who are here right now. Maybe we might have more. If not, we always know that we will get the replay game that shows up. Be nice. Oh yeah, sure. So again, if we don't have anybody who's up here on the panel, we have a lot of viewers. Well, still the conversation is going to be had nonetheless, because there's always, as I just said, the replay gang who will check it out and comment later. Because again, it is a Labor Day weekend. Folks may already be out doing whatever they're going to be doing. So this week in reality, or so I thought. Yeah, let me run the banner. I thought I had that going. There we go. So tonight's topic, which is pretty much just a random rant here. We're talking the week that was, I almost want to say nonsense, but that wouldn't be fair. No, I'm not going to say that. What I will say here is that this week has been one of those come to reality weeks. Now, if I were someone who believed in the Bible, I would say come to Jesus. But everybody knows my take on that. The Bible is a work of fiction. It is not world history. It has been proven that it's not world history, but you still have those who see it as such because those are the circles that they exist inside of. Now, mine is not to have a philosophical or theological fight with folks about it because fact is fact. All right, facts do not choose sides. But if individuals are not willing enough to take a look at the actual facts that exist, meaning reality, then what's the point of having the conversation? Everybody is grounded in their point of view, but I'm not going to spend my time trying to convince someone about reality where someone is not going to spend their time trying to convince me about what they believe to be reality. Now, believe it or not, there's this thing called reality. I said it a couple of times, I'll say it again, that cannot be escaped. However, we are able to craft narratives that make reality bend to a perspective that, although it might not be what everybody else accepts, for those who accept it and believe it, notice I say believe it to be true, then that will be fact, truth, and reality to them. No need to get into loggerheads about it. You have as much of a conversation as you can, and then you move along. But I'll save that part for last. So the biggest thing that comes to mind this week here is that everyone has been talking about how Donald Trump has thrown troops into the cities here, claiming that crime is above and beyond just absolute mad happen. We're talking bedlam, crime ridden, and so forth. I actually released a short. I'll take that back. I've released two shorts. Too short the rapper, but still two shorts covering where we are with this particular concept of putting troops into the American cities. Now, what I want people to think about here is that we've seen this done before, particularly from this particular president. So we look at where the troops have been deployed, California. We know we're talking DC right now, and there's the talks of troops being sent to Chicago. But the thing that I thought about, and I don't think a lot of people have considered, is that we've seen this play out before. Maybe not in these cities in particular, but we've seen this approach by Donald Trump already done. So what do I mean by that? I'm talking about the 2020 election when Trump claimed that, oh, well, there was massive fraud and irregularities. Notice right now in the cities that he wants to send troops, he wants to send them to where we have a large Black and Hispanic, Latino, we'll say mixed population. That's what he is aiming to do, or should I say, what he has done right now and what he wants to continue doing. The idea is to convince people that crime is out of control, although it's been shown that crime in the cities that he's speaking of are actually at a low. But that's not going to be a part of the conversation. When he first kicked this off, what he used were charts from 2023, which obviously are not 2025, but nonetheless, it gives him the motive to say, "Oh, look at the crime. We got to get in there." It's similar to what he's doing right now with the Fed and trying to fire Lisa Cook by stating, "Oh, well, there's irregularity, so I'm firing you." But nothing has been substantiated. Not a simple thing has been substantiated. Matter of fact, hold one for a second, folks. I'll be right back. All right. What I'm doing here is just finding the article that shows what it is I want to demonstrate to everyone, or provide at least. Give me a second. Amazing. Any other time when you're not looking for it, you can find what you're looking for, right? So, just to give you an idea of what I'm trying to do here. So, Donald Trump claimed in the 2020 elections that there was random and, well, I shouldn't say just random, but there was voter fraud that was fraught in particular areas. Wisconsin being one of them, Pennsylvania being another one, the battleground states. He claimed that it was rife with fraud. But the thing that he did then is the exact same thing that he's doing now. These places that he claims that there was fraud throughout in the 2020 election, they were all in populations where there were primarily Blacks and Latinos. Today, in 2025, Trump has claimed there's mass crime and criminality in locations or California, DC. Now he's looking to move to Chicago, but he's only saying that this crime exists in Black and Hispanic areas again. No one is taking into account the blatant racism that is being shown by him. Every area that happens to be crime ridden, as he's saying again, which he's doing with the National Guards, putting them in places that are supposedly crime ridden, are areas that have large Black and Hispanic populations. Back in 2020, during the election that he claimed that was stolen, although on tape, he said that he lost. I'll see if I can find that here in a moment as well. But it was in these battleground states, he claimed irregularities and fraud. But in those states, he said the fraud and irregularities occurred in, guess what? Populations where they were mostly Black and Latinos. His game plan never changes. It's right out front where everybody can see this, but no one gives it any consideration. So what ends up happening? He paints the narrative. People accept it, although nothing has been substantiated. We went through the January 6th. I guess they had not the trials, but they had the meetings that went on for a couple of months, going back and looking at everything that had transpired and there was nothing that substantiated the claim of fraud. Right out of the gate, Trump lost 65 plus cases back to back to back to back to back to back. Fraud was never proven. Not a once. But it was still enough for him to make the statement that we know that the Capitol got overrun by extremists. Now, I'm actually going to do a show on that here in the next coming weeks or so. Well, actually, probably in a month, because I've got to leave the country for some work that I've got to do, IT stuff. Still, just to bring this back in, we are watching the same one-trick pony performance play out right now. Nothing has changed. It's the same act. Now, let's go back to 1989, 1990, the Central Park Five. Now, remember, these are the young men that Donald Trump accused of being the rapists of a woman who was jogging in Central Park. Even took out an ad calling for the execution of these young men. Nothing had been substantiated that it was these young men. But again, we're talking the 90s, and it's still maybe about 20, 25 years or so out of Jim Crow, but still enough of a time to whereas if you push a jury at that time just right, you get a conviction, which you did. All five were convicted. There was coercion that was spoken of, but nothing was really considered. Even some years down the road where a man admitted that it was him, not the kids. Well, I should say men at this point in time, but Trump had a hand in that as well. So we're looking at a consistent pattern shown from him that no one wants to take the time to actually acknowledge. Oh, that's not the case. Yes, it is the case. But enough ranting on that. If it comes back up, if anyone happens to drop commentary inside of the chat, or if anyone wants to come up here and join me and we'll just kick the ball around, we can do that. Otherwise, let's keep it moving here. So one of the things that's not getting a lot of attention right now is the return to the land. Now, if you recall, there is an all-white establishment being put together right now. I want to say, is it Georgia? I've lost contact with it, but I was all over it when it first came out. But I want to say George. You know what? Before I say anything, stand by. Let me just clarify. Nothing I hate worse than not being accurate on the topic being discussed. Return to the land. Yeah, these guys even have a page. Here we go. Let's go ahead and bring that up. Now, if anyone hears an echo, please let me know. You know what I'll do? Let's see if I just share the tab. Turn off music. All right, so here you can see right now, this is the return to the land page. Now, again, these folks that are talking return to the land here, it's an all-white establishment. No blacks and no Jews allowed. Return to the Land is a private membership association for individuals and families with traditional views and common continental ancestry. We hold events and conferences, and we help groups of our members from European heritage communities. So we're listening to Donald Trump and his crew burn down the Constitution, burn down democracy, burn down precedents that have been set for ages, generations even. Black history is now considered racist, divisive, to include revisionist, but yet this young man, I don't think he's even 35 yet, but this young man is building an entire community with nothing but white folks in it. And not a single thing has been said by this administration about this act. This is pure and clearly racism. This is segregationist behavior. This is segregation in and of itself. This young man was even able to go on the news and talk about it, and is still continuing on. However, the mention of a course that deals with blacks, that deals with LGBTQ, that deals with Hispanics or anything like that, and immediately that institution is harassed, extorted, and shut down. Now, as I've said before, the DEI that we knew it to be, diversity, equity, and inclusion, I now call it Trump DEI, division, extortion, and intimidation. And that's literally what Donald Trump and his cronies have been doing for the last 6 to 7 months. Intimidating folks, extorting folks, and dividing folks. All that was in place that we know of recorded world history about slavery, although we know a lot of the information is still missing. A lot of information is suppressed. Hordes of information is still suppressed that we're still finding out right now. But at least for the history that was in place, we knew to a degree we could trust it. Not all of it, but enough that could be verified, which it can be. It could be trusted. But we've got this distortion of history that we're seeing now, where everything that has been in place, let's say dealing with civil rights, is now being distorted. The civil rights that were put in place since 1964, 65, ending Jim Crow, is now starting to dissipate. We're watching amendments or titles in certain rules or laws that have been passed that are being removed, that are being struck down altogether. And in its place, we're seeing this ideology that favors folks who are not non-black, or who are non-black, let me put it this way. We are having the environment, we're seeing the world that was fought for by Martin Luther King, by John Lewis, by even Sojourner Truth, going back to Frederick Douglass. We're seeing all the efforts that came to be in 1964, 65 crumble right in front of us. And we can't even get, and this is to my skin folks right now, we can't even get us to agree to anything to work together. Why? We've got multiple divisionary tactics and ideals that are coming up that are that's an impasse. That's the best way that I can put it. That's an impasse. What's an impasse I can speak of? Let's just talk about us being black to begin with. Back in 1989, Spike Lee came out with a movie that was called School Days. Now, depending upon your age, a majority of you have never heard of this movie. Matter of fact here, Alicia, you still there? If so, let me know if you've heard of the movie School Days. If you don't respond back, that tells me you either fell asleep or you might be working on something, but you'll catch up with this eventually. For those of you who happen to be here, School Days, again, came out in 1989, and this was about the time that apartheid was starting to gather the attention that it needed to, more so to whereas people were starting to talk about and were actually divesting from South Africa. Now, in this movie, you had two camps of black folks. You had the wannabes who were black, my skin color for the most part. Or I take that back, as you were. The jigaboos, I'm sorry. The jigaboos were my skin color. And then you had the wannabes who were the light-skinned blacks. So I don't know how many people remember, but you had this thing where light-skinned blacks had a good little run for a while, whereas us dark ones, hey, it was kind of hard to get a date here and there because, You ain't light skinned like I'll be sure. No, and I didn't have that unibrow like the brother did also. And for the record, I'll be sure could not sing. Yeah, I said it. Now it didn't keep me from buying any of his CDs or anything, but the brother could not sing. Now, thank goodness that you can loop tracks, right? But still, nonetheless, you had this light skinned black versus dark skinned black for a while. Even nowadays, you hear this thing of colorism that mostly black females talk about. Oh, you just don't want to date me because I'm too dark. No, someone doesn't want to date you because of your behavior, your attitude, contentious, adversarial. Now, I'm not saying this is all dark skinned women, but I'm just saying women in general will use some type of issue to say why they are not being favored. Different show. But what I'm talking about right now is just the skin color thing. So if you were dark skinned, you were, I won't say automatically riffing with a light skinned black, but when you were talking to a girl and she didn't want to talk to you because you weren't light skinned, as they said back in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s, then hey, that's just what it was. It was actual colorism amongst black people. Now, how stupid is that? Matter of fact, let me type this in the chat just for anyone who may be paying attention here. Uh, School days. A Spike Lee joint. I believe he spelled it Daze, but again, the movie is called School Days. It came out in 1989. Or actually, it may have been 88. Yeah, this is one of his earlier movies. This is about the same time that you had, I think there's More Better Blues. That was either 1990, perhaps. Then you had, I think, was Girl Six. I want to say Girl Six was one of his first movies. And then, of course, the character Mars Blackman. She's Gotta Have It. I think that was one of his very first movies. I take it back. She's Gotta Have It. I can't recall if Girl Six came back after that, but these are some of Spike Lee's earlier movies. Nonetheless, colorism was the big thing with School Days. So, what does that bring us right now in the conversation I'm speaking of? Foundational Black Americans. Now, these are Black folks, and this has been going on for quite a time now. These are Black folks who believe that Blacks are native to North America. Now, they're saying that, yes, there were Blacks who were here before slavery. Now, I don't have an issue with that because we know that there has been a lot of exploration from different companies, not companies, I'm sorry, different countries. There has been ocean exploration from supposedly Sweden, to where it's believed that the Vikings had landed in Minnesota before America came to be what it is. We know that the Spanish were here in Florida, Ponce de Leon. We know there was Magellan, who was also another explorer who supposedly came to America. So the question is, why not Africa? I want to say there was exploration that was done. I can't recall the name, but still, I'll go back and I'll find that information as I normally do, if need be, for clarification. But we had exploration, supposedly that was done by Africa as well. And I remember telling someone, oh, you know what? We'll come back to this in just a moment. But I remember having a conversation a few months ago where I was trying to let folks know, and I had a conversation with some brothers tonight, basically that Black folks did not originate in North America, from what science tells us. Now, as I tell folks, I reserve the right to be wrong. But as of right now, based on what we're seeing from science, there is no evidence that Black folks spawned on North American soil. There's no evidence of this. But you still have Black folks who are now going around saying that, Oh, I'm from America. My people were never in Africa. I'm Cherokee. No, no. I've got Cherokee in my family, but it's like 1 million billionth of a 16th of whatever, almost to the point of not even worth mentioning. But black people originated on the continent of Africa. That's what science has shown. The cradle of civilization comes from Africa. But that in and of itself does not mean that there cannot have been exploration from Africa to the United States, to whereas there may have been blacks as a result of that exploration, and we'll call it migration, may have been here. Now, there's not a lot of information on that as of yet, but that's not to say that there won't be. But for right now, we'll go with what is fact and what is known. There's nothing that supports that theory. Now, if you were to say that there were blacks in North America before slavery, then the question is, how did they get there if it wasn't from the slave trade? How did you get here before the slave trade? This would go back to, again, having the ability to find information that shows that there was travel from the continent of Africa to North America prior to the slave trade. Now, again, I'm not going to say that it didn't happen. I'm not going to say it did happen. But I know, because of the fact that Africa, going back to, let's say, 8,000 BCE, 15,000 BCE, 25 or 30,000, there was already the knowledge of science, math, medicine. This already existed. So who's to say that the possibility of maybe a boat created, or not created, but put together, fashioned with sailors, did not leave from the western coast of Africa or even the eastern coast and sail about and explore the world? Who's to say that? The biggest problem here is that we have folks who have spent their time mostly from the Western world, primarily Europe, that have discouraged the idea that Africa has any type of creativity that has come from the continent, which we know which is not true. We know there's been creativity in Africa. We know that before Europe became known as, and get this, folks, if you were to type in where is the cradle of civilization, you will find that Europe comes up. Primarily, it's either Rome or Greece would come up at the same time where it talks about the cradle of civilization for Africa as well. Type it in and see what you get. But be that as it may, no one is saying that the possibility does not exist. But I'm just saying, for right now, there's nothing that we can point to substantially to say that any blacks who are on the North American continent before slavery were born and bred and originated on American soil. Can't really say that per se, but more to follow. But getting back to what I'm saying is that when you have this type of knowledge, or I shouldn't say knowledge, this type of mentality, you've now got this movement. Whereas if you are black, but you cannot trace your lineage to slavery, you're discriminated against. You literally have blacks now discriminating against other blacks. Well, you're an immigrant. You're not actually black. You're not from here. So you need to go back to wherever you came from. And she's back. Stepping away, getting caught up with the playback, the colorism in the black community is a real problem. Willie Lynch is smiling in his grave. We'll come back to Willie Lynch some other time. Hey, what's going on, Huey? Yep. No one alive can say their lineage spawned in North America. Yeah, let me turn on the comments. This new this feature here. So right over here. Yeah, there we go. What's going on, Huey? Yeah, man. That is the newest thing that's going on right about now. You got black folks who are literally saying that, oh no, my people are from North America. No, your people are not from North America. Ah, there we go. That's the name I couldn't find. Mansa Musa. I just read that recently. Hell, it may have been today within this weekend or so. Yeah, thank you as always. Appreciate that, Alicia. So the belief here is that Mansa Musa may have landed in America. And if that were to be the case, and again, if that were to be the case, then that would account for blacks being here prior to slavery. But that still proves my point, though, that blacks did not originate in North America if that were the case. Oh, thank you for the backup on the fact checking, Alicia. As I said, that would still prove my point that we as blacks did not spawn in North America. That's like saying a guy from Vietnam spawned in South America or someone from South America spawned in Russia. No, if that were the case, that's where these people would be. But that is not the case. We all came from distinct locations. So it just blows my mind that I'm seeing blacks claiming that, oh no, man, my people have always been in North America. We've never come from Africa. The hell are you talking about? That's when we start losing the ability to at least have a decent conversation to where we can agree a blue car is a blue car. When you start losing that connection, then you're going to have deterioration in the community itself. Now, it's bad enough nowadays that with the advent of technology, we have a level of misinformation that has never been seen before, but that is only because of the advancement of technology. We have information, we have AI now, where people can create information that looks feasible, but for those who do not check, the first thing we do is take it for granted. Just to take a side street here, talking about AI, just within the last 2 or 3 days, although I think this hoax started back in the middle of the summer, there was this AI going around talking about the original Ronald the McDonald clown being a murderer. No, that was not the case. It never happened. Oh, by the way, let me get this up here. Colombian cocaine was found in. Nice. Colombian cocaine found in an Egyptian mummy. But yeah, Huey, you get what I'm saying, right? Obviously, man, you get what I'm saying. The oceanic currents would have deposited them near the Virginian or Brazilian coast. Yeah, so had Mansa Musa and his folks traveled across, as it stated, and hit America, it would have been, based on the currents at the time, it would have been in this particular location that Alicia is mentioning right now. So the big question is how we go about proving that. Well, that would be in and of itself another book. Matter of fact, hold tight. Where is that book? Crap. Ugh. Well, there's a book called They Came Before Columbus. I just purchased this and I thought that I had it in here with me, but I probably moved it somewhere. You know, I really want to show the cover of this book. Excuse me just for 1 second. Are you serious? Ah, there you go. Need to clean my office up. All right. They came before Columbus. Oops. So the author is Ivan Van Sertima. Now, this book, I believe, came out in 1976. So you had a lot of folks. She beat me to it. Yeah, but you have a lot of folks who pretty much panned the book, shit canned it for the most part, saying that the writings were unproven and that it needed more work and research to be done to it. So I don't know what's happened since then. Now, I have not read the book as of yet. But Alicia, feel free to spoil it. Oh, by the way, we're talking about Mansa Musa. The Olmec heads prove it. Remind me, was that mentioned in the book? Because I read a couple of articles about the book and some of the findings that may have been spoken of. Right, the Olmec heads have cornrows. You know what? Let's take a look at that if we can for a second. Oh, Olmec heads and Mansa Musa. Yeah, let me move this over here and we'll bring that up on the screen. So stop screen, edit, share screen, on the heads, no sound. All right, so just because Alicia mentioned, here we go. There we go, Agent Smith. So I'm gonna let you know right now, man, we're not gonna do your foolery that we did before. So I'll put you out before we get started. So just to make sure we're clear, man. But other than that, thanks for stopping by. So me, no, I am not Muslim. I am not Christian. I am none of that. As everyone knows, I am atheist. I do not believe in Jesus or God because the Bible is Aesop's fairy tale for Christians. The scientific method has proven certain elements or a lot of elements of the Bible are just not factual. But we'll get into that conversation shortly. All right. All right. Well, again, welcome to the show. Haven't seen you in a while, so sit back, throw in questions if you have any, then, Smith. Glad to have you. So, as I was saying here, Alicia was talking about the Olmec heads. Olmec heads are massive carved basalt sculptures created by the Olmec civilization of ancient Mesoamerica between 1200 and 400 BC, representing likely rulers with realistic individualized features, while Mansa Musa was the wealthy, powerful 14th century ruler of the Mali Empire in West Africa, known for his legendary golden pilgrimage. Matter of fact, he was considered to be one of, at the time, the richest men in the world, with the gold that he had in his empire total to be at the time, which would be worth now $400 billion. So again, he's considered to be, or had been, the richest man in the world. There is no known direct connection between the two. One is pre-Columbian art from Mexico, or excuse me, pre-Columbian art form from Mexico, and the other is a medieval African ruler. So if anyone is interested in more information about that, by all means, here's what I typed into Google for the search. Feel free to check that out. No, I wouldn't say I have the memory of an. Okay, yes, I also have the memory of an elephant. We'll go ahead and say that right now. That's one of my superpowers. So as I was saying, getting back to the discussion here. So we have this thing where we have blacks actively discriminating against other blacks, blacks coming from Africa, blacks coming from South America, the Caribbean, Antigua, Haiti, you name it. If they did not have any lineage from America, the word they call Those blacks are tethers, meaning that they are tethered to the law, tethered to the land through what's it, anchor? They call them anchor babies for their for the babies being born in America, and therefore the parents are able to be in America because of the fact that they had children over here. You have all of the same type of racism that you got from white and black exchange. Now you have black and black exchange once again capping on each other. Now, how ridiculous is that? So, there's always going to be some level of division that we have in the community. But why does it have to be the community against the community? There's plenty of things that can separate us. Obviously, we're talking about skin color. Light and dark was one of the things that still gets its play when people bring up colorism. If they can't find dates, there is Black Americans being here from America versus blacks coming from different areas. Blacks are all over the world here. But the thing here now with FBA is that if you are not tracing your lineage from America, then you are an immigrant. And just like any other folks who come from China, who come from Japan, who come from Europe, anything like that, they consider to be an immigrant. No, you don't need to be here. How stupid is that? Yep. I don't think the government wants us to get along. We need to understand this is the only race I see is rich or poor. Now that is a fact. They have and the have-nots. And believe it or not, that statement that you're making, Smith, yeah, they play us against each other. We have been played against each other for almost 2,000 years. Literally 2,000 years. And when I make this statement, I'm talking about something that goes past, we'll say, the Russians and their attempt to subvert America. I did a show about 3 or 4 months ago that talked about the Russian ideology of wanting to undermine American ideology to make it easier to divide us. But what the Russians realized is that there wasn't too much they had to do because racism was the main thing that divided the country. Now, even though they had a four-step process, I believe it started with destabilization. I want to say it was, yeah, destabilization was the first step. Now, if I've got it wrong, I'll go back and I'll piece it together for you guys a little bit later. But the way that it worked, it was a four-step process. Yuri Brezhnev, he was a Russian KGB agent who defected to the States in the early to mid 70s, who gave an interview in 1984 that talked about how Russia had plans of subverting American culture. He said the first thing they were going to do was undermine truth as we knew it. And to do that, they had to get to the next generation. We're talking K through 12. No, which is smart to include also the early years of college. And by doing that, that means that the next generation would not be able to tell fact from fiction. Even if you were to take them someplace and say, you know what, this is a lie, I lied to you. Nope, I don't believe it. I refuse to believe that. Even if you put their nose in it, the refusal would be so strong that the only way that they would ever take the lie as being a lie is if they themselves were affected. Ask yourselves, are we seeing something like that right now? Tell you what, let me do this here. Yuri Bezmenov. I want to say it was 39 years ago. 39 years ago. There we go. I found the article. Found it. All right. 39 years ago, a KGB defector chillingly predicted modern America. Yep, got to get the kids. So here's the title, Smith, if you want to check it out for yourself. So I'm going to try and run through some of this here because I wasn't looking to mention all this, but it all plays in here because, again, this is a rant. So there's nothing scripted. So if anything comes through my mind here that is pertinent to what we're discussing, we'll go ahead and put this out on the table as well. A former KGB agent named Yuri Alexandrovich Bezmenov claimed in 1984 that Russia has a long-term goal of ideologically subverting the U.S. He described the process as a great brainwashing that has 4 basic stages, like I mentioned. The first stage, he said, is called demoralization. I think I said destabilization, didn't I? Close, but not the same thing. Demoralization, which would take up to 20 years to achieve. Now, let me just go ahead and get down to the crux of what he was speaking of here. Chill and play. So again, ideological subversion is what they were playing at. So what it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interest of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. Does that sound familiar right about now? Does that not sound familiar? And by the way, you're welcome, Smith. Of course, she's going to say it's a good year because that's the year that Alicia was born, by the way. Girl, go on somewhere with that. All right. So, as I said, it's described as the great brainwashing. So, again, the demoralization aspect was supposed to take 50 to 20 years. And again, if you grab the kids, you know, as Whitney said, the children, what is that? I believe the children are our future. There you go. Who's going to be taking care of us, Gen X, as we start crossing the boundaries, whereas our relevance in society gets lower and lower as we get older and older? That means the next generation is supposed to do that. But what happens if they've been corrupted in their thought processes? Hell, Fox programming starting in 1989 with Married with Children did that, or at least got it started. Again, I'm old enough to remember that. All right, so let's look at the 4 processes. Again, he said that demoralization is first. Demoralization is a process that is irreversible. Bezmenov actually thought back in 1984 that the process of demoralizing America was already completed. It would take another generation and another couple of decades to get the people to think differently and return to their patriotic American values, claimed the agent. And what is perhaps the most striking passage in the interview, here's how Bezmenov described a demoralized person. As I mentioned before, exposure to true information does not matter anymore. A person who is demoralized is unable to assess true information. The facts tell him nothing. Even if I shower him with information, with authentic proof, with documents, with pictures, even if I take him by force to the Soviet Union and show him now, by the way, when we're talking about the picture that he's given, we're talking about Cold War America. So for any of you born in 1984 or past that, what he's speaking of may not register with you completely. Now, anyone born in 1970 and back, we have an understanding of what's being said here. Now, again, I'm 55 years old as of this year, so I can recall just about everything that he's speaking of right now and what the Cold War status was in America back then. Oh, yeah, this sounds like the majority of people right now. That's my statement I'm making. Look at what we have here when you try to have a conversation with the Foundation of Black Americans who believe that Black people spawned on North American soil. Or when having a conversation with believers, again, believers of Christianity. They actually believe that a man walked on water, fed 5,000 people with 2 pieces of fish and 4 loaves of Wonder Bread. But we didn't go to the moon. What do you do here, right? Sounds a lot like demoralization now, doesn't it? But as I said before, that type of indoctrination started long before the Russians came up with their approach. Yeah, Smith. Believe it or not, man, I grew up in the UK my damn self. So there's always been this understanding, of course, after the Revolutionary War, that yes, we are considered ourselves or view ourselves as brothers in arms. I was stationed at RAF Lakenheath, RAF Bentwaters. Then I was close to RAF Mildenhall. Traveled to RAF Upper Hayford, RAF Crowton. All the English bases back in the 80s when USAFE, the United States Air Forces in Europe, was USAFE. When the Cold War was going on, that was the best time to be overseas. But as we see right now, we're starting to lose that camaraderie here based upon the ideologies that now exist in the United States. When the eagle soars, the lion roars. Excuse me. So getting back to what I was saying here, even if I take him by force, said Bezmenov, to the Soviet Union and show him a concentration camp, he will refuse to believe it until he receives a kick in his fan bottom. When a military boot crashes his balls, then he will understand. Basically, they've got to endure or suffer before they actually see the truth. Even then, I've seen someone stomped on their ass, but the person still believed that Jesus Christ is his Lord. Go figure. When a military brute crashes his balls, then he will understand, but not before that. That's the tragedy of the situation of demoralization. Once demoralization is completed, the second stage of ideological brainwashing, asserted Bezmenov, what matters is the targeting of essential structural elements of a nation. Economy. Now, let me know if any of this sounds familiar, folks. This is not a prophecy. This is a process, a program that the Russians were working on since the mid 60s and throughout the 70s. Economy, foreign relations, and defense systems. So we know that right now, the Trump administration fired the head of the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. Why? Because he didn't like what was being presented, which was an actual portrait of how the country was not growing, while he was saying, oh, we're doing fine, we're doing wonderful. No, we weren't. So what does Trump do? Now that he's gotten himself in a position where he can actually start creating doctrine, he fired the person. So the next time, whenever that is, we get an update from the Bureau, it's going to be all shiny, glowy, happy people. The reality might be different, but that doesn't matter because glorious leader is going to paint the picture that he wants us to see. All right, so there's economy. Now, foreign relations. What's happening now? We've seen that about 3 or 4 months ago, Trump was having a go at our English counterparts. Now, I know there's still some blood that's not being mentioned there, but I couldn't be upset if England said, you know what, absolutely not. We're not going to go ahead and do this. Although we're still seeing cordial relationships here. We're still seeing this nonsense, for example, with NATO. Oh, you folks are not paying your fair share. There's nothing that talks about NATO supposed to yearly or however, biannually or however, pay a certain fee. That is something that he brought with him. The American school system stems from the Prussians. If you remember Prussia, World War I, Archduke Ferdinand, assassination of him, that's where World War I started from. If not, if I don't speak about it or have enough information, I'm sure that Alicia will drop something in the background. So again, we're talking about the targeting of the elements. We talked about the economy. Again, foreign relations. Trump is jeopardizing the relations with allies that we've had for decades. We see that is now on shaky ground. I want to say about a week ago, is it Norway or Denmark? I think Denmark. Greenland belongs to Denmark. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. Alicia, check and make sure here. I could be off here, but I want to say that Greenland belongs to Denmark. But supposedly there was an American envoy that was sent to Greenland that was poking around asking questions. And we all know what that means. That is the search party, or should I say we'll call it the scavenger party that's sent out ahead before the larger party gets there. So already we're seeing, once again, the Trump administration is trying to gather information to find a way to acquire Greenland. That is the move right now. The Trump administration wants Greenland. Denmark found out that some American assets were over there asking questions that were not feasible to be asked, and they are asking for an audience to once again clarify that Greenland is not for sale. But we heard Trump talk about, well, if we can't buy it, then we may have to take it by force. Again, what are we doing with our allies? What are we doing here? Also, this was not really newsworthy, or it should have been, but it's not. The acting commander for that base, which was female, was fired about 2 months ago, right when the purge was going on. I forgot who the male commanding officer was who replaced her, but she had done nothing wrong other than state her ground about how she was about standing for facts, and she was not really, well, let me not say she was not really, she did not support the pathway that the Trump administration was taking with Greenland. But nonetheless, yes, she was fired. Not in the news, but again, you'd have to do a lot of background reading, like myself and many others do, to know that. All right, thank you. Appreciate that. No, Russia loves annexing more so than America. I can't think of the last thing that we've annexed here, but we know that Russia annexed Crimea in 2014 and then topped that off with actually making the big move of rolling into Ukraine back in 2022. We're trying to get back into the annexing business. What is that? And the last thing here, defense systems. All right. So talking about defense systems, I think that Greenland would qualify for that as well as our allies. So we're trying to find a better location to strike if need be. And Greenland is what the Trump administration wants to get more armament on. They believe that's a great location to launch and defend from. The last annexation was Hawaii. That's right, the 51st state. Thank you again. All right, so moving down the list again, we've talked about demoralization, which is pretty much destabilization, the mindset. Or actually, I'm sorry. Destabilization is the second phase that we were just talking about, where we're targeting essential infrastructure. Now, the third stage is crisis. Now, he said that crisis would take up to 6 weeks, and we've seen what crisis looks like. Matter of fact, we know what a manufactured crisis looks like. Now, think about this. Back in 2018, what was the crisis that we were dealing with back then? The migrant caravan. And as soon as midterms was over, you never heard a thing again about the crisis. But one thing I think people forget about the crisis of 2018, they forget that Donald Trump had the country shut down for 35 days because he was trying to strong arm the government into giving him money to build that wall that was never really built. I mean, sure, there's some areas that were patched up here and there, but the wall in its totality, as he was claiming was going to be built, was never built. But he raided the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine. He raided their pots of money, to include the Army Corps of Engineer and anyone else that he could pull money from, stating that, oh, well, we'll have this paid back later. We'll look at this as being an advance on the wall. The government is not run like your personal piggy bank. I'll come back to that in a little bit. So anyway, the crisis in 2018 was actually two. Trump shutting down the government, trying to extort money to pay for the wall, the migrant caravan. All right, so what was the crisis in 2020? Well, the crisis at the time, if you recall, was the pandemic. Now, that was not manufactured. Now, I know there were people who like to call the pandemic the plandemic. But be that as it may, that was the crisis for 2020. Following that, What was the crisis for 2022? Who remembers? CRT, critical race theory. Now, as it was stated before, it was not being taught in schools, or at least K through 12. It was not being taught there. But of course, with propaganda, it was being pushed that yes, we have to worry about this. They're trying to indoctrinate our kids. They're using CRT to do so. Never the case. But that was the crisis. And as soon as the midterms were over, when is the last time anyone has heard CRT mentioned? Anybody? All right. And what was the crisis in 2004? Excuse me, 2024. Haitians were eating the family pet. We knew that was a lie. It was a ball-faced damn lie. But it was enough where people actually bought it. Now, crisis was already being pushed. We go back to 2020. Of course, we know about the attack on the Capitol. But how did that come to be? I forgot about that. But the crisis of January 6th was all built around lies. Trump was even caught saying later, yeah, we lost by a whisker. His words, not mine, but to still go out and say, yes, the election was stolen. The audacity to tell that lie. But we also have to look at the demoralization here. We're also talking about, again, the destabilization as well. What was one of the main things that helped Trump destabilize the faith in the American government? Elon Musk. So this is where my rant opens up a little bit more here. Alan Lichtman. Now, this is the guy who had been predicting amazing accuracy with who was going to be the next president. There are now 2 times that he's been wrong. The first time he was wrong was back in the election of 2000, where I think Supreme Court stepped in and stopped the vote counting, and they awarded, yes, I'm saying that, they awarded the presidency to Bush Jr. The only reason that Lichtman was wrong, and he recanted, or not recanted, but he restated, was that there were outside forces that interfered with his model. Now, he had 12 or 13 different points that outlined what would make a person a good candidate, or the process of what would put a person in the position of being elected president. So he had these 12 or 13 points that he relied on, and he was accurate with that. The second time that he was wrong was this past election. And he was trying to figure out, how was I wrong? But then he remembered, and he forgot something that everybody else forgot. Elon Musk was the outside force, literally sitting his ass on the scale by paying people $1 million or so to vote for Trump, putting almost $300 million of his money into super PACs and whatnot to help Trump get elected. But let's also go back to 2022 when he bought the Twitter platform to ensure that Donald Trump had a platform where anyone who supported him could launch their narratives from. So we're talking about the racism, the misogyny, the extremism, all that type of talk that got people kicked off the big 4. Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, I think Instagram. Anyone talking that trash, boom, you were booted. And you had no place to go. Now, this is back when we were talking about fact checking was being checked because of the COVID misinformation that you were finding, the misinformation in and of itself. Excuse me. All that misinformation was gone. And remember that we had a period of calm on Facebook for almost 5 to 8 months. It seemed like a year once Trump had gotten kicked off. We had all the craziness that was gone. We had all the MAGA, this, Trump, whatever. All that was gone until Elon Musk bought Twitter. and then gutted and stripped it down to where people who have been kicked off because of racism, misogyny, extremism, nationalism, you name it, even the insurrectionists who were kicked off, now we're back on the platform and unrestricted once again. And the misinformation started from there. Elon Musk knew that Trump needed a platform in order for him to be heard, because no one's really following Truth Social. But you had a few new places that popped up: Parler, Telegram, Rumble, for fact. All these channels that were popping up saying that, oh, we don't restrict our free speech, which means that you barely had any rules restricting anyone from what they were saying. So this goes back into the demoralization and the destabilization we're talking about, which we're also talking about the crisis. So we'll start back in. Let me pull the rant back in, but all that pretty much falls in line to what we're discussing right now. The third stage would be crisis. It would take only up to 6 weeks to send the country into crisis. Explain Bezmenov, the crisis would bring a violent change of power, structure, and economy, and will be followed by the last stage, normalization. Now, before I talk about normalization, let's again step back to look at crisis. What was one of the main things that people were being warned of back in 2024 that they did not pay attention to, that has now put a foot in everybody's ass, even if we didn't vote for it? Project 2025. Donald Trump denied any knowledge of Project 2025, but yet everything we saw right out of the gate once he was elected was lockstep in order with Project 2025. Would that not be seen as the crisis? Again, this is not a prophecy that he's talking about for the most part. This is a thought out program that they had put in place. And this is not by chance. This is a long goal that's being reached right now that we're seeing that's going on in America. This is something that someone has had, or not someone, but a group has had a long range plan that did not exist just on battles here and there. They've been looking at the war since the end of the Civil War, the long range. And I tell folks all the time, we are now dealing with the Confederacy once more. A Confederacy that is hyped and steeped with Christian nationalism. Those folks who are primarily responsible for January 6th. I'm going to be doing a show on that and showing that what we were dealing with was Christian nationalism that overrun the Capitol. But again, this all falls right into what we're discussing right now. Demoralization, destabilization, crisis. And the last point is normalization. And it says here, that's when your country is basically taken over, living under a new ideology and reality. Does that not sound like where we are right now, or where we almost are at this point in time? Everything that Bezmenov has outlined, we're seeing lining up. And again, it's not like it's a prophecy. No, folks, it's not a prophecy, but it is a plan that has been worked to the T. So again, here's the article name. 39 years ago, a KGB defector chillingly predicted modern America. Let me find this one thing. Project 2025 initiatives. Now, there is a list that was out here showing what's been implemented by Project 2025. I'm trying to see if I can find that right now. Any other time I can come across this. But right when I want to bring it out, funny enough, I can't find it. So bear with me just for 1 second while I try and find this information. ACLU. No, that is not it. So what I'm looking for basically was an outline of what the first 180 days were supposed to look like. You know what? Let me put that in here. Project 2025 and first 180-day playbook. Maybe that's it. No, that is as part 2. Maybe it's outline. Now, this is really bugging me, folks, because of the fact that I sat here and actually outlined the first 6 months, or at least I had an outline of the first 6 months, and it's killing me how all of a sudden I cannot find it. Yeah, let me step back one more place. First science, no, that's not it. That equal child labor. I can't find specifically what I'm looking for, but I will do this instead. So that's a problem with the rant. You may not have everything planned out that you want, and you can't access it the way you want to, but there's still enough here that we might be able to still get this done. Add to the stage. All right, the People's Guide to Project 2025. So this is the defense of what people are talking about that needs to be done to help combat what's going on here. Here's what's under attack. Cut wages, create unsafe workplaces, destabilize our economy. Now remember, that was a part of crisis. Actually, I'm sorry. No, that was destabilization, where it talked about the economy, infrastructure, but also dealing with our allies. Make it harder for Americans to make ends meet. Restrict reproductive rights and access to health care. Enable discrimination across society. Big one. Set polluters loose and undo climate action. Make education unaffordable and unwelcoming. That's where we're talking about this school choice nonsense. Funny enough, school choice was something that actually started back in the mid-50s. Who remembers that famous court case that went forward in 1954? Anyone? Alicia? 1954 court case regarding education. Brown versus the Board of Education. And essentially what you had back then, what segregationists were trying to do, was shut down and defund public education. So the money from public education would go to the private charter schools, because they did not want Black children going to school with their white kids. So the school choice thing that we're seeing right now, it is the same shit from the 1950s that they're once again able to do, and they're having success now because of demoralization, destabilization, crisis, and normalization. American society has been fully distraught. Okay, it has been fully undermined. The ideology that we once had before, from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, of creating knowledgeable citizens, good citizens, that's gone now. If we're to the point right now where we're actually seeing the advancements that were made from 1965 up to now being destroyed, we have seen ideological change for the worse. The last thing here, undermine government's ability to deliver for people. Cut wages, create unsafe workspaces, and destabilize our economy right out of the gate. Project 2025 would enable corporations to cut overtime pay, relax worker safety rules, allow workplace discrimination, and more. Are we now not seeing this? Now, keep in mind, now we have the ability, or I shouldn't say we, but the ability and the capability, that's not the word. Let me just put it this way. It is now allowed that you can walk in to your place of business, walk over to I don't know, the water bottle and say, "So, what's going on, Morty? How's your relationship with God?" It is legal to proselytize your faith at work right now. Even before, when they said, "Hey, you can have your faith, but keep it to yourself." Or find people who want to have the conversation with you. Maybe you can go out to the smoke area, poke, do whatever. All right. But now you can literally walk up to someone and profess your faith if you want to. There was an executive order that was recently signed by the Trump administration allowing this to happen. Continue on. Now, how would they do this? And going back to the question of or statement, Project 2025 would enable corporations to cut overtime, pay, relax worker safety rules, allow workplace discrimination, and more. Again, how they do it. Stop people from earning overtime pay. Project 2025 wants the Department of Labor to make it harder for people to earn overtime pay. Cut funding for local job creating programs. Manipulate data that businesses rely on to keep our economy functioning. Remember also the Bureau, the labor statistics. Oh, hey, there it is. Right there. Right there. By consolidating the Bureau of Economic Analysis, Census Bureau, and Bureau of Labor and Statistics, Project 2025 would kneecap the data collection capacities of these important agencies, with effects felt by working people across the nation. As I said before, all you have to do is manipulate the information that is relied upon, that is, if not a quarterly or monthly job quota gathering engine or whatnot, whatever you want to call it. You take that away and now you give it to someone who will intentionally manipulate the information. You've lost a fair amount of continuity. Weaken child labor protections. Project 2025 would amend hazard regulations to allow employers to put young people in unsafe working conditions. Now, recall back in Donald Trump's first administration, he talked about, oh, we've cut so much red tape, it's historic what we've done. So the red tape that Donald Trump was talking about was cutting the regulatory practices, which was safety measures in place for workers. He was literally bragging about cutting out safety factors for the benefit of workers. But then when he did this around 2017, 2018, he's fussing in 2020 about the amount of workers who are applying for workers' comp. Idiot, you cut out the regulations that regulated the level of safety that was supposed to be afforded to everyone in their work environments. Where he's touting, oh, we've gotten rid of so much red tape, he's increased the level of danger that a person would see on a day-to-day basis. Again, I'm not saying anything that can't be found. Donald Trump plus cutting red tape plus undermining regulations. I don't know if I'm going to find the particular article that I'm looking here. Taking notice orders, resuming these actions and decrease of the burdens often through. Okay, so let's do this. Alicia, looks like this rant is bringing in more information, once more than expected. Oh, please forgive me, folks. Forgive me. But there's just so much information that's out here that is hidden from people. Yes, ma'am. It was Brown versus Board, by the way. Being the Board of Education. So now let's go ahead and bring this fact up. Oh, by the way, anyone, let me know if you hear any type of echo in the background. All right. Since his inauguration in 2025, Donald Trump has intensified efforts to cut federal regulations and red tape through numerous executive actions, resuming and expanding on policies from his first administration. These actions aim to decrease regulatory burdens on businesses, often through controversial directives that have been challenged in court. So I'm not seeing what it is that I'm looking for. This is all looking at what's happening right now. But there's a news article from 2017 or 2018 that talks specifically about the regulations that Donald Trump was cutting that would be or that would harm the workforce in the years to come. And they actually did a follow up, and it proved the statement that was made a few years prior. Trump is notorious for creating a crisis and offering his version of a Hegelian dialectic solution. Yes, yes, yes. Speak on it, Huey. I think people call that the self-licking ice cream cone. So Donald Trump is cutting away at every little aspect of what we have here, of what has built the country up from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. We're talking about intelligence gathering, the Office of Management and Budget, the military itself, the infrastructure, all the core aspects of the country. He has chopped, screwed, and thrown people out and put in his loyalists. Remember, the IG inspector generals were one of the first groups of people that he got rid of. The guardrails are off, folks. He learned from his first presidency that in order for me to make things work, I've got to go back in and get rid of those annoyances that were in the way. Look at the FBI, the CIA, NSA, all four branches of the military. Again, the inspector generals are gone. Anyone that could have, the Department of Justice. Let's not forget how he has flushed the Department of Justice, and he's put loyalists in there as well. There is literally no one left to stand against this except the judiciary. And there's only so much the judiciary can do until we have people who will get to the voting boxes to back them up and cast their ballots. Ballots. But what is Trump doing right now? He's already doing that thing. Oh, we got to stop the mail-in ballots. No, that's cheating. They're redistricting in the middle of the cycle. Why are you doing this? Because they know that in order for them to win, they've got to do something right now. Even though it's out of cycle, it's perfectly fine here because of the fact that this is golden opportunity that we have. Yes, a golden opportunity to cheat. Now, if anyone is not familiar with what I'm talking about, Gavin Newsom is talking about doing redistricting in California because of the fact that Texas has just passed their new gerrymandered map. So as a result, Gavin Newsom was getting ready to do the same thing. And just the other day, Trump was trying to launch a lawsuit to stop him from doing so. Trump's hands are in the middle of everything now. If your kid gets suspended or expelled from school because of the fact that he called some other kid, call him an illegal alien or something negative. Trump will literally intervene in that. Literally will intervene. It doesn't matter. If there's a court case stating that, we believe in California, UCLA, where there's been a rash of anti-Semitism, and Governor Newsom, you need to pay us $1 billion in order to offset this if you want to ensure that you still get your funding for your state. That's what's going on right now. Donald Trump is right now trying to extort UCLA. I don't know who has missed this, but again, Trump DEI, division, extortion, intimidation. It just doesn't stop, people. Mm. Well, going forward with that, I think we beat that horse enough. But you get what I'm saying here. And also, let me go back and open up this project 2025 document one more time, just in case anyone wants to go look for that. Oh gosh, the People's Guide to Project 2025. So again, oh shit, I'm sorry. Thought I shared it already. Forgive me. The People's Guide to Project 2025. So if you're looking for a quick way to get this under your belt, hopefully in the 48 pages that's listed here, that'll help you garner better understanding because the original document, I believe, is over 800 pages. So for those of you limited in your time of reading, this will probably be a better guide and way to do that. All right, so the last bit of the rant. Oops. Now Missouri and Maryland about to gerrymander their districts also. See, here we oh, so the Republicans have now set off a chain reaction because of them cheating. Quick side note, all right, forgive me, folks, but as I said, these rants sometimes start one place and we go all across the spectrum here. 2016, right before Barack Obama pretty much leaves the Oval Office, Merrick Garland is his choice. Almost 8 to 10 months before leaving office, the Republicans decide, oh no, you can't allow a president who's leaving to appoint the next Supreme Court justice. No, the next president should be the person to do that. We're talking 10 months out. Keep that in mind now. They wouldn't even hold a confirmation hearing for Merrick Garland. So Donald Trump ends up winning, which is what they were shooting for. Plus, Russia assisted in the win. So Neil Gorsuch is appointed. Shortly thereafter, we have Brett Kavanaugh who gets appointed. So now we've got two conservative justices that are already looking at a majority, already going towards the conservative side. And then Ruth Bader Ginsburg's health problems start emerging to where it appears that she's on her last legs. Although she was having good times, she was still feeble, still sick. But the statement made was that, remember, the next president should be the person to appoint a Supreme Court justice. That was the words from the made-up rule of the Republican Party. Lindsey Graham went as far as saying, you can take my word for this, take this to the bank. We are not going to appoint anyone else. We are going to respect that rule. There will not be another SCOTUS picked until it's picked by the next president. And what happened? Damn near 10 days before the election, the Republicans pushed Amy Coney Barrett through to put her on the Supreme Court before Joe Biden was elected. Again, the cheating. So now you have a supermajority, but it didn't stop there, because what was the first thing they did once they had their supermajority? And we found out about it only because somebody leaked it, that they were going to overturn Roe versus Wade, because now we have got the majority to do so. Remember where I said this was a long-range game plan? This was not about winning a series of battles. Since the Civil War ended, starting with the Daughters of Confederacy, who are responsible for pushing the lost cause narrative of the South, romanticizing the South, stating that, no, we were being bullied by the North, making the claim, which is a lie, that it was about states' rights, not wanting to admit, and we all know that the war was about slavery. Putting up monuments after the war was over of Civil War Confederate soldiers, generals, naming bases after them. Things of this nature to intimidate the blacks who had their freedom after the Civil War, but from after the you want to say Reformation, but Reconstruction period, which lasted from 1866 until 1877. When the Union Army removed their last troops from the South, it was as if the war had not been fought, and blacks who had gone from being seen and working in areas of education, of law, medical, politics, all that was stripped away. Now, there was even two insurrections that had occurred. One was in Louisiana, I want to say it's 1874. The second insurrection was in Wilmington, North Carolina in 1898. And in both these towns, both in Louisiana, was it Shreveport? Was it Lafayette? I forget, but I'm going to have a show on that as well, where we look at the insurrections that have occurred in America. America has endured 3 insurrections. 3, just in case anyone was not familiar. The insurrection of 1874, which was in Louisiana. The insurrection of 1898 in Wilmington, North Carolina. All right, now both of these areas had democratically elected interracial governments. In 1874, that government was overthrown, but it was only temporary until it was won back. But the government, again, the interracial government in Wilmington, North Carolina was overthrown, white and black killed, hung, run out of town, and that government is still in place today as of this live stream. White supremacists attempted to overthrow in 1874, which they did, but it was the coup was handled and government was restored within 48 to 72 hours. The insurrection in Wilmington, North Carolina was never restored. White supremacists took over the town, and that government that was installed then is still in place today. And the third insurrection, which was January 6, 2021. But I'll get more into detail of those. So in case no one knew, we had 2 insurrections prior to January 6th. But does anyone's history book even bring this up? No, you don't see it. All right, so what was the third thing I wanted to rant about? Oh, yes, the third thing I wanted to rant about was, are you still here, Smith? Religion. Religion is the last thing that is dividing us up as a country, but again, for my skin folks, dividing us up as a race. Just in this week alone, within the last 72 hours, I've had conversations with blacks who, again, believe that space exploration, space travel didn't happen, but they think that a man walked on water. As I said before, fed 5,000 folks with 2 pieces of fish and 5 loaves of Wonder Bread. Awakened from biological death of 3 days, and then went to Galilee and gave a speech. Another guy claps his staff on the ground, or maybe claps his hand, and the Red Sea parts. You have people who actually believe this, but yet they do not believe that we've been to space. It's all a hoax. But what would give them reason to believe that, these folks who believe this? Well, let's think about it. The Tuskegee Airmen debacle, where they were actually injecting syphilis into healthy black men and then having a longitudinal study to see how they were affected over the course of time. So yes, that would aid folks in not trusting. That would also help make it easier for conspiracy theories to live and breathe because of that distrust that was sown. And what becomes of this type of distrust? You get the lie that 79% of Planned Parenthood clinics are in Black and Hispanic neighborhoods. That's a lie. I've already debunked and proven that. You get the claim that Planned Parenthood was put into Black neighborhoods to control the Black population. That was a lie. You get the lie that Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, was a Nazi and endorsed eugenics. That was a lie. And a lot of that was also taken out of context as well. But that's the whole purpose of propaganda, to discredit what you can't successfully disprove or disavow. The man in the house rule, or the statement that the federal government, and yes, I'll say this, the federal government supposedly was kicking black men out of the home. No, it was not the federal government. It was not even anything that was mandated or synchronized. It was local agencies operating in a sense, or in a deregulated sense. No one was over control of that per se, but these agencies were still responsible for determining who was going to receive assistance. Now, what people don't seem to realize, and when I try to have the conversation with my skin folks, is that welfare was originally not intended for black people at all. The 1935 Social Security Act was created to ensure there were precautions put in place for the elderly who are aging, but also for mothers of dependent children and those without husbands. But look it up, the Social Security Act of 1935. It was a program that was originally intended for whites only. And through white flight, where you had redlining in districts that were being created to where you had permanent underclass, and you had areas where blacks were going to live and whites were going to live. And eventually, when the concept of the suburbs popped up, you had white flight to the suburbs, to where now they started moving blacks into these housing projects. It was supposed to be temporary, but we know what's happened with that. It's become more permanent. Now, add to that, when we look at also technology, the changing of work, of how we earn our livings. So whereas now we're looking at blacks who have been working in the field, who have been doing manual labor jobs, who are not prepared to work in factories, which at the time was the new technology, the automation of that period. So of course now these black men have to leave and go north or go looking for work. So that also cuts down on the ability of marriage, but there's still sexual relations. So we get to the man in the house rule, just to bring it back in it. So no, the federal government was not kicking the black man out of the home. Now you had the trial in 1968, King versus Smith, where the Supreme Court formally shot down and abolished the man in the house rule. And you know what? Let me do this, since I'm making mention of the lies here. Man in the house rule. I want to say it's encyclopedia.com. Encyclopedia. For Pete's sakes. Here we go. Folks, you're just getting more information than you planned for. And I'm actually giving more information than I planned to give. But it all works for our betterment, right? So remember now, the topic that I was talking about was religion here, but there are other aspects, not just religion, but being able to have a conversation that everyone can agree upon. Religion, we're going to switch back to that, but I want to show you some of the other issues that come into play when you start having the conversation of religion, and people cannot believe information being told to them because of propaganda, because of levels of indoctrination, or as we talked about when we looked at Yuri Bezmenov, talking about the ability to destabilize the ideology of the United States. Now, these are all things that just crash together here. All right, so the man in the house rule, a regulation that was formally applied in certain jurisdictions that denied poor families welfare payments in the event that a man resided under the same roof with them. Under the man in the house rule, a child who otherwise qualified for welfare benefits was denied those benefits if the child's mother was living with or having relations, sexy time, with any single or married able-bodied male. The man was considered a substitute father, even if the man was not supporting the child. So that means that if the welfare agent came by and found some shoes in the house that was a size 12, but mama's feet was a size 6, she would lose her benefits. Now, ultimately, what you had was a suing that took place, to whereas the children brought forth a lawsuit against the Supreme Court, or I shouldn't say the Supreme Court, but brought against the agency responsible for welfare benefits, saying that no, this is not fair because this is not our father. It's captured here for the most part. Where is it that specific? Here we go. In King versus Smith, 392 U.S. Code 30988, and all the other yada yada yada, 1968, the U.S. Supreme Court entertained a challenge to the man in the house rule brought by the 4 children of Mrs. Sylvester Smith, a widow. These children were denied benefits by Dallas County, Alabama welfare authorities based on their knowledge that a man named Williams was visiting Smith on weekends and had sexual relations with her. Now, here's the sad part about this. Mr. Williams was a married man. It's like, woman, you've got 4 kids and you messing around with a married man as well. The children of Smith filed a class action suit in federal court on behalf of other children in Alabama who were denied benefits under Alabama's substitute father regulation. This regulation considered a man a substitute father if he lived in the home with the mother, he visited the home frequently for the purpose of living with the mother, or he cohabitated with the mother elsewhere. So long story short, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the children, pretty much shut it down. So to get more information on that, actually, I'll just read it right here. Before 1968, administrative agencies in many states created and enforced the man in the house rule. So as it clearly shows right here, the federal government had nothing to do with this. This was a deregulated effort that was undertaken by separate agencies. But if we look at the year 1968, what was still running rampant back then? Racism. So if anything, and I know there's going to be this thing where you have entities that still want to say that the federal government was kicking the black man out of the house. No, the federal government had nothing to do with it. And folks, you can see that for your damn selves right here. This was all an undertaking by those agencies. And even then, it's not a federalized effort. It's not even a state synchronized effort. These are individual agencies, especially the ones in the South, who are taking it upon themselves to shine extra attention on black households. The federal government played no part in running and kicking black men out of the home. So I want to make sure that anyone who hears me say this, you take this information forward from right now. In 1968, the U.S. Supreme Court struck down the regulation as being contrary to the legislative goals of the Aid to Families of Dependent Children, AFDC program. The AFDC program, established by, did I not say this? The Social Security Act of 1935, provides benefits to the children of impoverished parents. So shut that bullshit down. If you ever hear anyone talk about, oh, the federal government kicked the black man out of the house. No, it did not. Enough said on this. By the way, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the format over here, this is what I generally do when I'm not discussing what the platform was originally put together for, was to discuss relationships between us folks over the age of 50 and sharing our information, so we can leave some breadcrumbs for the people who are 49 and younger. But as things start rolling out here in the country, I felt it was necessary that I shift my focus for a little bit and provide information and fact checking for a lot of the information that's being exchanged out here. So hopefully I don't put everybody off here with this rant that's all, oh shit, skip my language, but we're at an hour and 45 minutes. This is only supposed to be an hour, but there's so much information that when you pull on the string, more comes with it. So again, let's go ahead and try and land this plane. So going back to what I was saying, you have blacks who think angels and Jesus are real, but space exploration never happened. We never went to the moon. Now, how does that come to be? And that comes from, again, indoctrination. Now, I will not sit here and say that I find it to be goof troop level of ridiculousness when people will actually think, again, that a man walked in water, fed 5,000 people with 2 pieces of fish, 5 loaves of bread, and that a 600-year-old man grabbed two of each species, or male and female of each species, and put them on a boat for 40 days, and there was no mass slaughter by the carnivores eating all the herbivores and omnivores, because predation is a real thing. But obviously, oh no, predation didn't exist. The animals all kept their decorum, and the lions, you stay over there, the gazelles, you stay over here, and everything be everything. Come on, people. History, origins, and context matters. We appreciate you. Hey, I appreciate that, Huey. By the way, folks, Huey and I first came across each other on a platform called Deconstructing Christianity. And Coach Reed, or Lorenzo Reed, puts this on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, which is 11 o'clock Central Standard Time. I happened to bump into these guys about what, Huey, about a month, you say? And not that I spend a lot of my time speaking about religion on my channel, but I'm thinking now this is something that I'm just going to have to go ahead and delve into, because we have a lot of discontinuity in the environment with my skin folks from what is fact versus what is fiction. I met some brothers this evening over at my local Eat 'em Up joint. Matter of fact, it was Black Eyed Peas, where Alicia and I did our show a couple of weeks ago. And we just happened to get in the topic of religion. And let's just say that although we didn't agree on a lot, we still had the relative amount of incredulous looks, me the atheist, looking at the believers, those who believe in Christianity, who think that scripture is world history, and then them looking back at me as, well, where's your morality? What higher power do you look to? I don't look to any higher power. I look to myself, because I am responsible for my behavior. I would get asked the question, well, if you don't believe in God, well, then what allows you to live? How do you get through your day? I mean, how are you able to live the way you do? Because there's this thing called choices that a person can make. Also, freedom. If I make the wrong choice, I lose my freedom. So because I don't want to lose my freedom, I make good choices. And that doesn't require me giving my money away on a Sunday or being in church 4 or 5 days a week, or however you want to put this. All right. So just disclaimer, folks, this part of the show right now, this is not Sunday school. This is not vacation Bible school. This is not a Sunday sermon. And this is not Bible study on Wednesday night. This is a factual conversation. I will, again, only speak about facts and things that I can speak to. I appreciate that, Huey. Conflating religious beliefs with factual history. Yeah. Crazy enough. I'll put it this way. One of my associates, aka I'll say friend as well, I was on his show the other day, and they were having a conversation about truth versus propaganda, and the statement of the Bible had to come up somehow. I don't know who brought it in first, but we started going round and round about what is real, what isn't. And I brought up, which matter of fact, what I did tonight. I spoke of in the book of Daniel how Nebuchadnezzar had thrown 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, into the furnace, which was burning 7 times hotter than a normal furnace, because they would not worship this gold statue that he had. So these men are thrown into the furnace, but they do not die. And there is a 4th figure, supposedly, that is seen in the furnace, a divine figure. Jesus, God, one of the two. But again, none of this happened, folks. The Bible is a book of fiction. There's fables, there's parables. There are good lessons to be learned, but that does not make them true. So, where it's stated that Nebuchadnezzar was a real person, and this is what you're seeing of history saying that Nebuchadnezzar was a real person. The Nebuchadnezzar in the Bible is not the same person, because we're talking about a level of fiction here where people are thrown into a furnace, again, 7 times hotter than a normal furnace, and they survive because they're seen walking around because of this fourth figure, a divine figure that saves them. But what you don't hear is about these 4 figures walking out of the furnace. Go back and take a look. I don't think anyone walked out of that furnace. But of course, we know that it is fiction, because the person will be roasted immediately. Even just throwing people in there, whoever throws them in will probably roast and die themselves, just trying to throw folks in. But be that as it may, you have folks who will say, well, this person is actually in the Bible, so everything is real. Now, in this conversation that I was having the other day on this panel, the statement was made, Alexander the Great is in the Bible. No, I'm going to tell you guys right now, I didn't feel like just going forth with that conversation because I knew where it was going to. Now, in his mind, oh man, you took an ass whooping. No, I didn't take an ass whooping. Now, I'm sitting here thinking, because I don't want to extend this conversation any further. Now, all you're doing is substantiating your indoctrination to me. See, what religion does is that religion will try to take an element of reality to garner credibility. Now, when these books or these chapters of the Bible were written, we have to think about the time period that it was written. So when Alexander the Great was being mentioned, and this would have been around 100, 169 AD, or somewhere in that area where there was mention of this. I was looking at this just the other day. Alexander the Great had been dead for almost 200 years. I'm sorry, disregard, scratch that. I'm thinking about Ptolemy First Soter, another issue. But what I meant to say here is that when Alexander the Great was being mentioned, you have to think about this. When the writer put that in there, possibly he was alive at the same time Alexander the Great existed. So it's just like anything where if I were to write about, I don't know, Kevin Hart. Kevin Hart obviously exists right about now in the same time period that I'll be writing of him. So then I write a book talking about the glorious achievements of Kevin Hart. And then one day, Kevin Hart decided that he was tired of being 5'3". So one day he prayed, and he was 6 feet, something like that. Now, this is the type of thought process that went into the Bible, where you have some type of imagination that goes beyond any type of reality. But you put it in the book, you write about it, and remember now, this is not world history. It will be accepted as is written, or maybe you get a parable or a fable of some sort. But the thing to keep in mind here is that Kevin Hart, as we know it, is 5'3". For me to write a story that Kevin Hart magically became 6 feet, we know there's no truth in that. But still, if I write it and I get people to believe it, because I tell them that if you don't believe this, then you fall out of favor and your soul will go to hell. Oh, hey, I'm going to get believers out of this. So what you have here, if you see the name Alexander the Great in the Bible, it's a reference, nothing more. But just because his name is referenced does not mean that Alexander the Great is in the Bible. His name is mentioned in the Bible, but there's no action or deeds done by him. And even if it were, it would be some type of fabulous story, no doubt. Again, we've got people parting oceans. We got people who are coming back from biological death. We have people walking on water. We've got all, again, like Huey said earlier, conflating religious beliefs with factual history. This, as I said before, is a case of religion co-opting reality to garner credibility. Didn't happen. So there's a common saying that I put out here, and I'll say it again, and you'll probably hear this tomorrow if you join Coach show here. Look for it at, again, 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on YouTube, 11 Central, Deconstructing Christianity. Belief, or let me scratch that. Faith is the belief in the non-existent. And belief in and of itself lacks these characteristics, lacks comprehension, critical thinking, common sense, facts, evidence, and recorded shared history. And then you put all of that against the scientific method. I think I may be doing a show tomorrow night. I think I've got it on the books already. It's either 7 or 7:30 tomorrow. But I've already got it listed on YouTube. So look for Deconstructing Christianity, Ends of Times Myth. Now, as I tell people, I am not going to claim to be the most versed and read person in the Bible. Have I read the Bible? Yes. Have I read it from front to back? No. Am I literate? Yes, I am. And because I'm literate, when I read, I'm able to decipher fact from fiction. If your oppressor and your enslaver is the same creator of your savior, you are steeped in indoctrination. Some would even call it the Stockholm syndrome, where you have people or the captured taking on characteristics of their captors, more or less now becoming a part of the captor's operation of what they're doing. They're now believing in it. They now follow. Religion is the last aspect of slavery that we as Blacks are bound by. And that is something that you find from the mindset of folks who are deconstructing it and trying to pull people out of this. Now, this is going to be extremely offensive to folks who have grown up knowing me. Now, I have never hid the fact that I don't believe I am an atheist, but I'm not going to go around grabbing people off the streets. And look, there goes a whole bunch of Christians. Quick, grab! No, there's none of this going on. I mind my business, but if the conversation comes up, I state my mind. Eventually, you get to the point to whereas, well, what do you believe in? I don't. Well, we can't have this conversation. All right, so we can't discuss this because of the fact I don't believe in the biblical character that you call Jesus the way that you do. Even though, no, screw it. Even though it is shown that this man did not exist. Now, he did in the biblical world. You have biblical history, and you have world history. The thing here is that believers believe that the Bible is world history. No, it is not. But if you believe that it is so. So I'm sure I'm going to have a hella commentary from folks I know and others who I don't know who may want to chime in on this. All right, feel free. Like I said, I'm not going to say I am the most versed person in the Bible, but I'm not going to sit here and say that I don't recognize fact and fiction, and I cannot read and ascertain for myself. So we'll just drop it off right here and understand that there are folks who believe that Jesus and angels exist, but that we've never been to the moon. Fathom that. All right, we have literally hit the 2-hour mark, and this is further than I had ever planned to go. But again, sometimes these rants turn out to be like that. So I'd like to say thank you to Agent Smith for dropping by, for Alicia, aka Hunting Wisdom, as well as Huey for dropping in the chat for providing commentary. And also to the 4 folks out in the cloud who are looking at this, thanks again. By all means, folks, think about it if you want to join in. There's always a comment you can make, and I'll drop the link and we can come up and have a discussion. All right. Well, that's pretty much it. Closing thoughts. We have got to get on the same page, folks. As I keep saying before, facts do not choose sides. When we look at where we are right now, we are seeing propaganda that is being utilized by this administration that is up and turning fact as we know it. We're seeing a distortion of government, and no one can agree on the same facts in order to properly engage this issue that we're having. There's only so much that the judiciary can do. To me, my thought process is first and foremost, at least when we look at it from the perspective of Black history is being erased right in front of us. We've got to be able to get on the same page, skinfolk. We've got to decipher fact from fiction. Somehow, some way, we have got to do something to whereas religion needs to not be that separated that currently stands right now. Find somebody who knows somebody to tell somebody about what we've got going on over here. If you like it, let me know. Share it if you do. And subscribe if this is what you're looking for. Thanks again for the folks who stuck in here with me. Again, Huey, Agent Smith, Alicia, thanks for providing some additional commentary. See everyone some other time. Break it out. Takes one to teach one. Right on. Till next time, John Henry out.